Today on the show, I have the great pleasure to welcome the European Union Special Representative for the Gulf region. He's a former Italian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister, Luigi Di Maio. Hi, Luigi.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thanks for taking your time for us. You must be a very busy person.
Yes, but there are busier people in this particular time. In any case, it's a very interesting time, never boring, as you can imagine, and obviously many challenges ahead of us. But I'm sure that as European Union, with our allies, with our friends, we will face these challenges all together and we will go ahead in a better future.
You got this job and it put you straight away to the hottest places on earth as far as politics is concerned. That must be quite a challenge.
Yes, but I have to say that as European Union member states in 2022, we were visionary because we decided before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so before the gas crisis, and then obviously before October 7, 2023, we decided as European Union to set up this new strategy of the European Union to the GCC countries, to the Gulf region, so even to the wider region. And we decided to...
So the GCC is the Gulf Cooperation Council that you're spearheading, right?
Exactly. And there are the 6 countries that you know better than me: Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, and Qatar. But the Gulf region, it includes even other countries that are very important for the stability, for the security, and for even the prosperity of that region and our region. Assumption was at the time, the security of this region is our security and vice versa. So we started to implement this strategy as member states. I was still Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time. We approved it at the beginning of 2022. And then in that strategy was written to appoint a special representative for implementing this strategy that is about trade, about investments, about energy, about regional security, about people to people, about institutions. And that's it. They appointed me at a certain point in mid-2023. Then, unfortunately, the terrible terrorist attack of Hamas against Israel came on October 7, 2023, and the world changed. And even the effects of that war in Gaza obviously are spreading around the region, the political effects, but sometimes even the military effects, like in the Red Sea, for instance, but even what happened recently between Israel and Iran. It's a very important region for our security, but it's even very important because the GCC countries, so the countries I mentioned, are our strategic partners. And I'm very proud that after almost 1.5 years of work, we were able to organize the first ever summit of our leaders in Brussels on October 2024. Was the first ever time that the 27 leaders of EU and the 6 leaders met. And we are working a lot now on the follow-up of the final statement of our leaders, where there is everything in terms of how to go ahead and to develop and strengthen our strategic partnership.
Do we have some concrete outcome from there? What comes out from this GCC?
I mentioned the 5 pillars of my mandate. Let's start with trade. We just started the free trade agreement negotiation with United Arab Emirates. It's something that is a game changer because as European Union, we were stuck in a free trade agreement negotiation block to block, EU-GCC, since 36 years. The approach has changed. We want to negotiate bilaterally, for instance, with UAE as building block for then concluding a block-to-block original free trade agreement. This is very important for investments, for our companies, for their companies to coming to invest in Europe. Second, we are trying to facilitate the relations of our companies with the governments there in order to get more opportunities in these visionary vision programs. Trillions and trillions of dollars are moving during this period there for this Vision 2030, 2040 program, Saudi, UAE, and all the others. So we opened the first ever Chamber of Commerce, European Chamber of Commerce in Riyadh for assisting companies.
You mean there were no Chamber of Commerce before?
No, not before. Indeed, during this interview, you will hear many times first ever. That on one side, it's very good because finally we got it. But on the other side, we have to say that we have to fill the gap. And this is why I am the first ever special representative to the Gulf region, because we didn't invest enough in the past on this file. But you can see, now I'm mentioning the trade, but we are going to conclude the Energy Cooperation Agreement, MOU, between European Union and Saudi Arabia. And then many new channels of cooperation on security, maritime security, cyber security. And you will hear even on people to people, because we are trying to work on facilitating even the movements of people on the visa issuing. No? The issuing of visa is still something very bureaucratic. And last year we got a very important first step. That is the so-called multiple entries. Now the GCC citizens that want to come to Europe, entrepreneurs, tourists, investors, they have a validity of 5 years on their visa, that it gives them more chances to come here. Not only for them, even for the students. You know, they are used to study more in UK, in the US, but I think that we have to attract more and more even their students. Yeah, it's a long path. Nothing will happen soon. But this is why this is a strategy to target the medium long-term goals.
This region is very important, but we have also a big competitor, or is it a partner? The United States. I mean, Trump's US.
Honestly, I don't feel US as a competitor, because honestly, these countries are very important even for our foreign affairs policy. And when it comes to Russia-Ukraine, to ceasefire in Gaza, to the ceasefire Israel-Iran, to the ceasefire in Yemen, to the Red Sea, to the Horn of Africa, when it comes to all these files, they are strategic partners of the Western community. For instance, the most important exchange of prisoners between Russia and Ukraine was negotiated and facilitated by UAE and Saudi. As you can see in Gaza, we count on Qatar for having the ceasefire. And Qatar was very important, the Emir of Qatar, even for the ceasefire Israel-Iran. And Oman was negotiating between US and Iran a deal on nuclear, and so on. We can go ahead a lot on that. I have to say that when it comes to the multilateral approach and multilateral partners, they are fully aligned with both European Union and US. Of course, there is a competition among our companies, of course, but it's a fair competition that is even within the European market among our companies in Europe. Our duty is to remove all those bureaucratic barriers, custom union barriers, tariff barriers, in order to free the flow of goods and business between these two markets. Because the GCC market and the European market together, they represent almost the 20% of the global economy. It's something very important in terms of numbers.
You mentioned removing tariffs. That's not very fashionable at the moment. It's more about putting tariffs. No?
It's a very interesting debate at the time. When I mentioned the free trade agreement with UAE, we want to close with a happy hand even the block-to-block free trade agreement. When it comes to that, it's because the European Union market wants to create more and more free trade flows with our partners. And this market is very interesting for our companies, for our investors. And you know, it's very interesting that because we were used in the past to look at the GCC, to look at Saudi, UAE, Qatar as investors in Europe. If we look even at the football, they bought a lot of our football clubs, but now they are buying our footballers like Cristiano Ronaldo, Benzema, for supporting, fueling, and developing their football there. This is just an example. There is a lot more there. But the paradigm has changed, and now they are attracting our investors, our companies there for realizing the implementation of these huge vision programs that are very important opportunities. But as I told you, we have to free the flows.
Free the flows. And you were involved in high-level talks about the ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all Israeli hostages, lasting peace. How can we bring peace to that part of the world?
The point is to create a new security architecture in the region. And this architecture of security for the region, first of all, has to be region-led. In the past, we tried, And when I say we, the West, let's say that, we try to create a new equation of security in the region, a new architecture. But at the end of the day, the most important challenge is to support them in the region in creating this new regional security equation architecture. I think that we experienced a very good period before October 7, where many of those countries in the region were normalizing relations, for instance, with Iran, or UAE, United Arab Emirates, with Israel. They were taking very important decisions like the unilateral ceasefire in Yemen for de-escalating. They were developing new initiatives in order to reduce the tensions and to create channels of communications for a new equation of security. But they were very honest with us. They said, okay, normalizations, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Abraham Accords, okay. But without solving the Israel-Palestine issue, the Middle East peace process, you will never have a new equation of security for the region. They were right, because then, despite all this very important normalization, even the Al-Ula agreement, the Baghdad conference, despite all these very good initiatives, very important initiatives, October 7 came and it was like a reset for all the good things were done before. So I think that we have to support them, but at the same time, we have to work for the two-state solution. I know that now it's probably more difficult than ever to have a Palestinian state, to have the two-state solution. We are still working for the ceasefire, but we have to...
So that's the European Union's goal, this two-state.
The world is working for the ceasefire now, but as you know, I am not directly in charge for the Israel-Palestine issue, because for the Middle East peace process, there is a special representative just appointed, that is Christophe Bicot, a very good French diplomat, French ambassador, that now is my colleague on this file. And he is working a lot on that, but I have to say that the European Union is in all the formats where the Global Alliance, for instance, the Peace Day effort, in order to promote with many partners around the world the two-state solution. But I know that is very difficult. But you know what? In case we have, and let's hope very soon, we have the ceasefire in Gaza, we have to swear that we don't forget again the main goal, that is not only the ceasefire, but it's a peace process. Because if I tell you how many leaders in the world before October 7 were working and were discussing about the two-state solution as main priority of their talks, honestly, I don't know, but are few, in my opinion. But because I was among them, I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs, was not on top of our priority to work for the two-state solution before October 7. So we have to be sure that once we have the ceasefire, the day after, but even the day before, we have to continue to work on the two-state solution, because the equation of security of the entire region, from Yemen to Iran to Gaza to Lebanon to Syria and the rest to Red Sea and even the African shore of the Red Sea, it goes through this issue.
And you speak about this issue and how to bring peace there, but don't you see more risk? Because you know there is a whole rearmament around the world. So instead of looking for peace, we are all building up armies. Is that positive? Is it going to increase the risk or decrease them?
The point is the deterrence, and everything is doing the European Union now is in terms of deterrence. Of course, there is not only what is happening in the Middle East. We know very well that we have a war in the European continent with the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So we know very well that what happened during the last years with Ukraine was a wake-up call for the member states of the European Union and for the European institutions. We changed a lot of rules for supporting Ukraine and for affording this risk. And the risk is an existential threat on the soil of the European continent. And this is why the Europeans are discussing about this program that is Rearm Europe in terms of deterrence. And this is clear because if you are weak, and I'm not saying that we are weak, but if you are weak in times of aggressions, you can only be in troubles. So the point is to send a clear message. The European Union doesn't want the war, doesn't want to increase the tensions, but at the same time wants to create a real system of deterrence for deterring those geopolitical powers that are looking at Europe, undervaluing our strength.
There is the topic of war and these geopolitical tensions, but there's another one which is very important now in our world that might have at least as big an impact to it, is artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see its impact on our world? Is it something top on the agenda for you?
It's on top of the agenda because the countries of the GCC, particularly Saudi and Emirates probably in the lead at this stage, they are investing a lot of funds, human resources, and partnerships with other countries in the world in the AI. And the investment is huge. You saw that during the Trump visit to UAE, UAE signed this important agreement with NVIDIA for the semiconductors. This is their main target at the time. Saudi is investing as well a huge amount of funds in AI, because AI is not only technology, it's now requirement for geopolitical power. It's becoming a strategic asset for the countries in the world. And indeed, you can see the competition between US and China on that. And we saw what happened with two softwares of AI, the two apps, and what happened to exactly the ChatGPT and DeepSeek. What happened to all the AI companies in US after the DeepSeek shown some kind of potential actions is able to do. So in my opinion, AI, it's going to impact everything, but not necessarily in a bad way, but of course will transform many jobs, will transform even the strength around the world of many entities. And we have to be sure, and this is why we have the AI Act in Europe, and we have the first ever regulation for AI at this kind of level. We have to be sure that this very important system of network connections and technologies will stay in the right hands for good purposes.
Big challenge. And for the GCC, how important is AI within that project or that council?
Honestly,
is it really taking place from the European side, or?
If you look at the main chapters of their vision programs, AI is everywhere. And honestly, believe me, the more I work with them and the more I'm convinced that they can be our strategic partners, even on AI, because they are not only putting in written their goals they want to achieve on AI, but they are developing and they are delivering it. So we have a lot of potentialities, and this is why I'm working on that, even on the people-to-people relations, because partnership between our universities, schools, and in general educational entities are very important for achieving this goal.
Now, one thing, they have very different political systems, not judging at all, but the EU is about being a democratic entity. Over there, it's a different type of political structure. How do we reconcile this?
We have many partners around the world that they have different systems, different structures of the state. And even when we are not in line, when we have different views, we speak each other. Because the difference between partners and countries that are not partners, it's in particular about that when you have different views, when you have critical points where you have even discussions, are discussions among partners. And we have many channels even of cooperation on issues where we are not on the same page. And the more we discuss, the more we talk, the more we deliver together for getting closer our positions.
Okay. So back on the AI aspect, maybe you would correct me there, please, but are European leaders really fully aware of how important AI is on its impact on our societies, that it's changing at an incredible pace? Are they really aware of that? And do they take really the stance that is needed to be ready?
After the conference in Paris, where Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, announced more than 200 billion euros of investments in AI, I can answer yes. When I was Minister of Economic Development in Italy in 2018, 2019, we were already discussing about AI and was very far, if I may, from the priorities at the time of the European continent. But we saw during the last years with the G7 presidency of UK, that is not EU, but is our main partner in Europe, and then the Paris conference launched by Macron, and many other initiatives around the European Union, I see that something is happening. And even there, even in Paris, less than 1 year ago, you found some Gulf leaders there as investors in this common initiative. Of course, the dimension of our companies in this sector is totally different compared to the dimension of the US companies or Chinese companies in that. But at the same time, is a priority of our governments. And even the regulation, I know that European Union sometimes is very criticized by many actors for the regulations, too much regulations and so on. But in my opinion, we have to avoid that this technology stays in the wrong hands. And as a continent, we have to pay a lot of attention on that.
But we can do what we want in the EU, but then the others in the US, in China, they just steam ahead in the meantime and they invest a lot. Do we invest enough actually in that topic?
We are doing as much as we can. We are investing as much as we can what we have in terms of funds, resources, and even connecting our universities and schools and funds in order to work on that. Of course, it's very different as model. Even the venture capitalists in Europe, they are a different number compared to the US economy. But I fully believe...
You're being very diplomatic here.
Yeah, because you know better than me, it's not only about the public funds, it's even about the private VC.
Yes.
I think that we have not to consider US only as a competitor, but even try to partner on that. I know that we are in a specific moment now where we are speaking with our friends in US in order to appease the tariff negotiation.
Yeah.
It's even about service, no? It's even about services, not only about goods. And this is why on this side, we can work a lot together.
You know, when I was preparing the interview with you, Luigi, I told some of my Italian friends here, I'm going to do this interview. Would you have some background information, some things that give me some spicy things, you know? And he said, Luigi did something actually very interesting. They not all liked you, to be honest, but they said, you tried something very Okay.
Otherwise, I didn't lose the elections.
But they said there was some interesting idea with something like the universal income, something like that. And maybe it was too early, maybe I don't, for different reasons. But with AI, back to that one, if people get redundant, aren't you going to be the one who had the cool idea where we said people now have to have a universal income instead of working for money?
The history will judge that. I'm not the right person to answer your question. But I know that there is a huge debate about AI, how many jobs we will lose, and how we will support the people who will lose the job. But this is a debate that requires even more skilled people. I can say that in Europe is a debate like in the rest of the world. But let's hope that the difference will be made always by people plus AI, not only AI versus people, because now we are in the mode where the AI totally replaced the person. I don't think that. I think that the difference will be between a person with AI versus a person without AI. And this kind of, I would say, partnership or alliance between the person, man or the woman with AI, it's something that probably will make the difference. And so we will not necessarily lose the job because of AI.
Do you use AI every day?
I use frequently, in particular when I want to get a press report on one item. The AI is very useful for that. But thanks God, in my job is still important the human approach and the people-to-people approach. So on that, I work a lot on meeting in presence, on personal relationships with the people and so on.
So you're not afraid of AI taking your job?
No, but I know that the AI can ease a lot of procedures in this kind of job. In general, can even get, speaking about the structure of the diplomatic corps on the ground and the HQs, the elaboration of all this big data that is coming from our head of delegations around the world, ambassadors, diplomats, and so on. How to elaborate, how to digest all this big data is coming from them. I think the AI can help a lot and can give us some trends that probably we are not able to digest, to elaborate in a short time as the AI does. And the AI is faster, absolutely, in some kind of processes.
And it's a matter of timing. And I know you have a meeting afterwards, or you have a very busy schedule. So that was maybe a hint. I really respect the timing.
Thank you very much. You are very kind. Thank you very much.
The last question for you. Look, what can we wish you for the next 3 years? What would you like to be 3 years from now? I would just like to say, this is the one thing I contributed for the world. What is it?
No, I'm not so important for answering this question. Something like that in terms of saying where we are going as world. I will work more and more in order to have these countries we mentioned today closer and closer to the European Union as strategic partners for facing at world level the main challenges we are facing. And I hope that we will see more and more normalization processes, de-escalatory processes among them in the region in order to have more peace and security and stability, because their peace, security and stability is our peace and security and stability here in Europe.
We hope to see more de-escalation, more peace and security in the world, in Europe. Thank you very much for this message. Thanks for your time, Luigi. It has been a great pleasure. I wish you all the best with your work. You take care.
All the best. Bye-bye. Take care as well.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Do you struggle to capture and share the knowledge of your experts? Contact us. We'll love to hear from you.